Thank you very much, Mandalee. Thank you everyone for joining. As you know, this is the overview TOPSpro Enterprise TE training. This will be an overview training. We'll go over the basics of TE. Feel free to post any questions in the chat box if you do so. To introduce myself, this is Oscar Peña. I've been with CASAS for about 8 years, and I'll be doing the second part of the training. With me, I have Adrian, and I'm going to let Adrian introduce herself. She's going to be doing the first chapters. So go ahead and take it over, please, Adrian.
Thank you, Oscar. Like Oscar said, my name is Adrian Bacchus. I have been with CASAS since November, so I am still fairly new, but I did come over from the agency level, so I am well versed in what we're going to be covering today, and I will be doing the first half of this TOPSpro Enterprise Overview presentation, basically showing you where to go to install TE and how to navigate certain aspects of that start page. So what we're going to start off with is installing TE. So we're going to be using the Rolling Hills simulator server today. And what we're going to be doing is when you go to etestonline.org/Rolling Hills, you don't have to follow along. This is just for general knowledge. This is where you're going to install TE, if you can see my screen. So when you get to your eTest page for your state, you're going to click on Install TE. You're going to follow the prompts, and it's going to download TE. You're going to give it permissions, and then what you're going to do, I'm going to switch the share, is it's going to bring you to a sign-in page that looks like this. And again, we're using Rolling Hills simulation, and the agency for Rolling Hills is 4908. So once you install TE, it'll bring you to a startup page that looks just like this. You will select your server, whether it be global, California, Washington. You will put in your agency's ID, your user credentials, and your password. Now, the Rolling Hills simulation password, just if you want to play around with it in the future, is admin, ADMIN, all lowercase. And you're just going to click connect. It can take a second or two to log on. So this is the start page. So in TE, you're going to notice that this was enabled a while back. It's a start page. It has basic shortcuts, recent reports that you may have run, alerts and notifications, new build releases. Maybe I'll show you your WTU balance and certain other aspects that you can have that are helpful. Now, some people like the start menu. They like seeing updates. Your own agency can put in certain announcements here, like CASA staff meeting, February 28th at 11 a.m., and you can customize that. Now, if you don't like the start page and you don't want to see this page, then you would go either click on the red X up here to hide the start page, and then to bring it back, you would just go to this view up here in the top, and you would bring back the start page. Now you also noticed under the view that you can change the size of your dashboard. So right now we're normal. Say I want it to be large. You see how all of the font and everything got large. So if you need a larger font, a smaller font, you can change it there. So here are some menus that we have in TE. I'm going to close the start page. Your organizations. So your organizations, this is at your agency level. This is everything that's attached specifically to your agency. So you have your CAPE consortia, if applicable. You have your agencies, your sites, what classes are connected to your agency, what users that are using your agency, their access groups, your personnel, who do you have working at your agency. Your organization is basically everything that's attached to your agency, your forms that you're using, your test administrations, your survey invitation sets, your survey forms, your agency's testing stations, testing sessions, and testing session templates, as well as tests in progress. So some people have called into tech support because a student has started a test, but they don't see a score. And here is where you would find that. You would click on your test in progress. It's going to show you everyone who has a test in progress. So that way, you can see who has not completed their test yet. Records is everything attached to the student. So just remember, organization is specific to your agency. Records is everything that is attached with the student. So your student demographics, that's your highest level of record for this category. This shows you all of your student demographics, name, date of birth, native language, what year they're in the program. It also shows you all of your enrollments and records for your classes. So what students are enrolled in what classes and how many hours they've done in those classes under class records. Same with programs. Again, this is connected with the student. It's going to show you what students are enrolled and what their records are. It's also going to show you all of your students' tests, what tests they have taken. Your core performance students, this is for your employment and earning survey. This is going to show you all of your students who are involved in that, your invitations that have been sent, and your survey responses. You also have graduation detail, employment history, and places of employment. So next on here, we also have, hold on, reports. Now, reports is a combination of both records that are connected with students and your agencies. So your CASAS e-test, this is going to show you a combination of both. The next assigned test day, you have multiple sites. It's going to show you for all of your sites. You can customize it to show just one site, but this will show your next assigned test for the student's personal score report, test administrations, how many e-tests that you have left, your WTU balance, an agency test score overview, and so on. Also, you have your demographic reports. This will show demographic detail for all of your students. It will also show a summary of your demographic detail, total student hours, so all of your students' hours for all of the programs that they're in, your distance learning hours, your class distance learning hours, and so on. There's a lot of good reports here. Your program outcomes, so your enrollment summary, how they enrolled, what buckets are missing, what buckets have more info, less info, the update summary, maybe you ran an update on some of your students and you want to see what got updated. This would be the report for that. Test results, you have different options here. You can do individual skills profile that shows the students' individual skills at their level. You also have a summary that shows the students, not the student, I'm sorry, the classes summary for that individual. Competency reports are also located here. Content standards, learning gains, if you want to see how well the student is doing with their learning gains. Also, we have consumer skills profile, graduation reports, data management. Your NRS data integrity report can be found here. This is a good report to run to see what is missing. If your students are missing their last name, their employment status, their ethnicity, this is a good report to run for that, as well as your state reports. So we're in California. So for California, you can run your CAPE tables, barriers to employment. Your CAPE data integrity is very similar to the NRS data integrity. It shows you what is missing, students with less than 12 hours, students who need a post-test, who have a pre-post-test pair. That can all be found under your data integrity reports. Program hours, same thing. If you run this report, it's going to show you all of your hours for the selected program year in one location. You also have your pay points, student gains, EL Civics additional assessments, as well as other reports here. Probably the most used report that we're going to look at, or not report, it's actually a lister, is your student demographics. So using student demographics, you would go to Records, Students, Demographics. So this is a lister. It's going to give you a list of all of your students who are currently enrolled in your current program year. So if you can see here, it's 806 students that are currently enrolled in the program year. You have many different filters. You can filter right here on these little funnels for looking up a student ID. Just click Add Filter. You would type in either the start of your student ID that you're looking for, or you can also put in contains, which is great if you just know part of the student ID, and then select OK. You can also filter by last name and first name, again, with putting it in here under Start With or Contains. If you want to have this filter go more alphabetical, you would click on this arrow up here. So this will now alphabetize it from A to Z, or you can go the opposite and go Z to A. You can also filter by name. Same thing with the funnel. You can add in your specific start with, end with, or contains. Also with the name, you can filter the same with the arrows up for starting with the alphabet starting with A or down. You can filter by date of birth with the same principle, gender, ethnicity, races, native language, and so on. You also have the filter button up here, which you can click on, and this has your current program year. So this shows only your students in this current program year. If you want to customize this filter, you can go over to Add, and you can really get into a deep dive here of how you would like to customize it. Gender, age, you can customize it by status, highest year of school, class enrollment. So there's many different filters here as well. Let's see. If you want to filter your columns better, like right now, as you can see, we have students, last and first name. These are our columns. So what you can do is you can change your columns. If you want your columns to only show your student ID and your last name, then you would just click these, keep these, and get rid of these down here. So whatever is highlighted, you can remove over here, and then it's only going to show what's in this column. And then once you've decided what you'd like to see, you click OK. Another way of doing that is if you right-click up here in the blank part of the column, right-click with your mouse, you can add different column features, show their address, date of birth, cell phone, and etc. If you would like to remove a column, the same is true with clicking on the right click. Right click and you can remove it. So right click here and we can hide native language. Now that's no longer here. Maybe we want to hide the race as well, and that's no longer here. Sometimes if people are looking for a student that is not in this program year, you can always take this filter and remove the year like we already did, and it's going to show you all the students. As you can see, it shows 6,719 because that's for all of the years. Let's see, we're going to move on to, so let's add a new student. So if you were going to add a new student into TE, you would go up here to New. And from here, we're going to add our new student. So you would create a generic ID. I'm just going to create 1010 for the student ID. You're going to have the first name, last name. Oops. If I could spell my last name. Gender, if they have a social security number, you're going to put it here. If they consent to sharing it, you're going to mark that yes, they signed the consent. Yes, they've signed data sharing. If they have a GED ID, a HiSET ID, you're going to put that here. Down here, you have the educational part. Let's say they only completed the highest year was 11. So that means they did not get a degree. Moving on down, if they have GED scores, you can add them here for 2014 GED, GED 2002, same principle, HiSET, same principle. You would select ethnicity, their native language, their race, and their address. So you would just put in what address that they have. We'll just say Casas Avenue, their zip code, city, we'll just say sample, and so on. Here's where you'd also put in their phone number, cell phone if applicable, fax, people on faxes. You know, always put in a little side note here that student, maybe has a third phone, maybe student has another email address. You can kind of use that as a spare box and then fill in the student's email. Once you have selected all the fields that you want to select, you would click save, and now that student is saved. So if you want to search for this student, we're going to click here. We're going to go right back into student records and then demographics. Now the student ID that I put in was 1010. Now if I click on 1010, you notice it doesn't show up, even though I created the record. The reason it's not showing up here is because I did not put the new student into the current program year. So if you know that you've created a student and you cannot find them right here on your demographic lister, you can go up to your filter, and we're going to want to remove the current program year. This will show all students enrolled, even if they're not enrolled in the current program year. And there I am. So how do I get myself put into the current program year? Well, to edit your student information, you're going to want to double click on the student. And then from here, up here where it says in program years, you would select that. And we're going to go down to here to new, add new. And we're going to put the student into the current year of 22-23. No site selected. So we're going to put them into the site. We're going to use Rolling Hills 1. And we're going to click save. Now that I have saved it, if I go back to our records, students, demographics, and we're in the current program year, that's why it's green. It means that there is a filter applied, and we search for that 1010 again, you will notice that now that student has populated and shows up. So from here, you can do a lot in the student information designation. If you have to edit their ID or their name, you can do that here by clicking on the pencil. So say you put their name in incorrectly. Maybe it's supposed to be, Adrianne. And so you can correct it here, and then you would just click save. Maybe their education was put in incorrectly. Maybe they only had highest year of school was 11, but they got some other type of diploma or degree. You would put that in here, and you would click save. Also from this page, you can also click on their student records. You can check if they're enrolled in a class. You can also add them to a class here by selecting new. You can check their class records. That is all of the students' hours that they have earned. You can click on new to add in new hours. You can also filter by current program year or previous current years. You can check to see what programs that they are enrolled in, their program records, what tests the student has taken, their demographic history, their employment history, invitations that they have received, surveys they have received, and so on. So there's a lot of good information under here that you can access. and put the student into. Okay, I'm going to take a brief break. Is there any questions on what we've covered so far? No? Okay, moving on. Editing student information. Oscar, is there anything you can see that I have missed highlighting?
No, very good. Very good coverage. We do have a question
Okay,
just to address it
okay.
from Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
Isabel is asking if the social security number, once it's entered,
Mm-hmm.
can it be hidden for other users?
So you can restrict it. So if you are the data manager and you are wanting your schema, so under your organization or records, students, demographics, now you can't hide the social security number in this informational page. But here, as you notice, it's not selected. So we could say show SSN. Here is where you can hide it. If you have users that have certain access rights, some users have more access rights than others, meaning they can see the student information. You can block that so they don't see the student information or see certain student information. But here, if you hide this, if it was shown, you would just right click and you would hide the social security number. And once you get your columns, I forgot to mention earlier, my apologies. Once you get your columns where you want them, say, I like how this looks. These are all the columns I want. You can save that in your schema. So if you go to more and you click schema, then you're going to save. And this is going to save how this page looks right now, the exact order that it's in. So to reiterate that question, you can hide it here, and you can also, in user access rights, restrict that option, but I would advise emailing tech support for further detail on that.
That's a very good point, Adrian. And to add to that, if you are to double click, so do me a favor and double click on any of those demographic records, please.
Okay.
So you do see that the SSN number is there, but once that number is entered, this will be an access that would have to be limited to the access group, for the user. Perhaps, if the user should not be seeing Social Security, perhaps the user should not have access to TE, but you would have to determine that. But all that can be managed, as Adrian pointed out too, through the access group. And if you have any questions of exactly what to control through the access, please go ahead and send us an email to techsupport@casas.org. techsupport@casas.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. And then just to show the data managers in the audience, your access groups and your users are right here. So you can see all of your access groups that you have applicable here. This is what your agency is offered for their access groups, and you can see what users have what access groups. So maybe you have someone who has TE enhanced and you want them to have TE basic. This is where you're going to change it. But again, for further detail on that, please email techsupport@casas.org so we can further assist you. Were there any other questions?
Yes, there is just one more question.
Okay.
So we have a question from Harold. The question is, will we be covering duplicated records? Duplicated student records, I suppose this is.
Oh, in this series, we won't be covering duplicated student records in this series, but I can show you where that report is. So if you go under records, So if you go under your reports and you go under your data management and you go to duplicated students, this is where you're going to run your report for your duplicated students. I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay, Oscar, and just click on it really quick.
Yeah, go for it, please.
Okay. So here, what you're going to want to do for your duplicated students is it's important to add certain filters. And what we're going to do is matching fields and non-matching fields. These are going to be your big ones for finding duplicated students. The best way that we have found to select matching fields is by their first name, last name, date of birth, and gender. And then for non-matching fields, and if you want to remove them, you just click on them and remove. We go by student ID and we add that over for non-matching fields, because Sometimes you'll have one student that has multiple IDs, but it's very rare that you have more than one student who'll have the same first name, last name, date of birth, and gender. So that's what we advise for a filter for this, is to filter like that. And then you would just generate your report. So again, to find that report, you go under data management and duplicate students. I hope that helped.
Thank you very much, Adrian.
Okay, and if there's no further questions, and if you're ready, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Oscar.
Thank you very much. So I'll be covering the next chapter, and just to give you a quick overview, it will be we'll be covering adding records manually and TE reports, which will include data submission for WIOA and CIEP, and then how to disconnect and exit TE. All right, so just to get a quick survey here. How do you register your students? Do you register your students manually? Do you register the students through an import? Do you have a third-party demographic database that you use? So that's one question you want to ask yourself. Are you doing it perhaps through e-tests? So this is one of the areas that we're going to be addressing. All right, so to start, we're going to go ahead and go over how to add sites. As you know, the agency is capable of adding site. What is the description of a site? Is basically a physical location away from the main campus, the main building, the main address. So you're welcome to have as multiple sites, but if you do, how do you create that? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So 1 second, share screen. Let me go ahead and access TE. All right, and by the way, for those who came late, we are using the Rolling Hills Simulation Server. What is the Rolling Hills Simulation Server? That is our training database that is accessible to anyone. Anyone who has TE installed, it's just a matter of clicking on that server, choosing Rolling Hills, and using the following credentials. The fictitious state agency ID is 4908. The fictitious username I'm going to be using will be administrator 1. You can enter 1 through 60 at rhas.org. That stands for Rolling Hills Adult School. So the password will be admin, short for administrator. So ADMIN, admin. All right, so I'm going to click connect. All right, and we're going to go ahead and close our start page. Adrian covered the start page, so we don't have to go over that. Now, as you see, this is TE over here, and we're going to click under organization and sites. As Adrian pointed out, everything that has to do under organization, it's what the organization as an agency has. What are the sites? What are the classes? What are the users? What are the, their WTUs, the forms, and so forth? That pertains to organization. Records, on the other hand, it's what pertains to the student. So we're going to be covering organization for now. All right, so we're going to click on sites, organization and sites. Again, we're using our fictitious database for Rolling Hills over here. So Rolling Hills happen to have 2 sites. You have them displayed over here. One is 003, the other one is 01. So most of the data is under 01. So we're just going to stay on that. Notice that under our lister over here, this is what we call a lister. We have the site ID, the site name, and the following column is ETS site. This selection enables the agency to test for e-test under this particular site. So if you are to create a new site, along with the option of creating that site, you want to enable that site as e-test. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the site for e-test over here. Notice that it has this little icon over here for which is a pencil. It's just basically kind of like a lock feature to save you from entering by mistake any information. So we're going to go ahead and enable this field for site identification. There you have the site. If you need to change that site ID, that's where you do it. If you need to enter that name for the site, that's where you do it. And this is where you enable your e-test, your site to be an e-test site. All right, so and then obviously you have the contact information for that particular site. So whoever is in charge of that site, whoever is managing that data, but perhaps the testing process, so that could be entered under site contact. All right, so we're going to go ahead and that will be your site. Once that site is created, notice that under the navigator, you have class definition, you have class instances, and you have registered users. So we're going to go ahead and go to class definitions. So I'm going to click on class definition. So here are the class definitions that every, that this site happens to have. What is the amount of the number of classes this site has? You can see it over here under the count. It's 749. Again, this is all fictitious data, but this is the data that is being entered. So within that, we're going to go ahead and just for the purpose of doing a quick overview through each one of them, I'm going to go ahead and quickly filter for in a specific class. So notice that when I filter, I click on this little icon. This is called your add filter. When I click on that, I get this little window and I'm going to enter the following ID, 991861. Okay, so it gives me a any class that matches with this database is using extended ID. It's up to you. Not every agency uses extended ID. It can be problematic at times because agencies or users will tend to think the ID for the class is just this number, but in reality is the combination of this number plus the extended ID. If you are to enter only this number at the point of say importing, then the system will create a new class. So that's just a a side note to mention. But we're gonna go ahead and go under this particular class over here. So once I click over here, notice that this is the definition of the class. Again, notice the pattern how TE uses this pencil icon to enable you to edit the information. You can enter that class ID, the course code, the class description, extended ID if you are to use it. Those agencies who use, a A22 course code, that will be their display. Now, in addition to that class definition, those of you who know that class structure, you have your class instances. So the class definition, as you can see, carries the class ID and the class description and any information you see right here. It's basically the description of your class. That's your definition. Class instances, on the other hand, if I am to click on the class instances on the navigator over here, this particular class, again, we're under class 991861 has only one instance. The instance go by the year. So remember how we said for the definition basically carries the name of the class and the ID of the class. Basically, those are the two biggest fields. The instance, on the other hand, and notice that the definition does not have any date mentioned. There is no program year, there is no starting or ending. That is by design because the structure is to have one definition and the instance will repeat every year. So next time you create that class, next time that class recycles, let's say, you don't have to create that definition. All you have to create is a new instance for each year. All right, so we're going to click on this instance over here to see what are the parameters, what are the settings for that class instance. Once again, we have that pencil icon that we need to click in order to enable the editing of these fields. Notice that the class instance has your start date, your end date, has your instructional program. This class happens to be an ESL class, special program. This happens to be an EL Civics class for those classes that do have EL Civics, focus area, your physical settings, all the parameters that have to do with the with the class itself, instructional program, the settings, the time, about the time that it starts, whether this is a distance learning class or in person, then all that is determined under class instances. All right. So next, we're going to go ahead and cover class enrollments. So class enrollments in, we're going to go ahead and address class enrollment. So notice that this class, again, we're sticking with the same example. This class happens to have a total of 23 students. You see their start date and their end date displayed over here. You see their class status, you see their IDs and so forth. If I were to double click on the student, the system goes ahead and shows the screen of the status of this student. All right, so going back on the previous screen, my next record will be class records. So class records in attendance carry the same information. It's just that attendance is more in a attendance form where you see those students displayed, and you can go ahead and enter their attendance. You can use this form, or you can use this form as a record. This will be more of a record, but essentially they display the same information. Notice that you have the ID, you have the name, you have the date, you have the type of attendance, whether this is daily, and you have the amount. You also have the displayed as distance learning. You can go ahead and have it instructional attendance combined. That will be the combination of instructional and distance learning. All right, so that will be how it displays under class records, but it also can be added under attendance. Okay, so then you have tests. Obviously, if the student has tested, then the system will go ahead and display the test that has been given. Now, TE has the capability of showing those tests regardless of the site, regardless of the class that student is enrolled or those tests were taken under. What is showing you over here on this screen is based on the enrollment of the student, any test activity that has been given, it would go ahead and show you over here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and skip class cancellation and class request because this will not cover the basics that we're doing over here. All right, so notice as I'm going from one area to the other, TE will give me this sequence of tabs. I can go ahead and take myself one step back by clicking on closing each tab or clicking on each tab. So it gets me all the way to the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the site. All right, so looking at my sheet over here of items to cover, next we're going to go ahead and address users. All right, so we're going to, for users, that will be under organization and users. So as we talked with Adrian before, the purpose of users is to have people doing certain tasks in TE. Some of them are going to be data entering. Some of them are going to be perhaps generating reports. Some of them are going to be perhaps making sure that the data is clean, that the data is good for reporting. So TE has different levels of access. So let's just go ahead and click under this over here. This is your data manager. So there is usually the typical setup will be one data manager per agency. There are situations where multiple data managers are needed, but but usually it will be one data manager per agency. So you can go ahead and display that, and then in addition to that data manager, you have other users, such as your TE admin. So data manager, as explained, is the top level of access. Then you have your data manager that would go ahead and but the data manager can go ahead and give access to other users, such as TE admin, such as teachers, in other users that would have other roles perhaps. So what you see right here is the access, the user for this particular TE admin record. So we're going to go ahead and click on that pencil icon. You'll see that the user account usually is the work email. If you are to reset a password, this is where the password is reset. Notice that by default, TE does not display the password. The password is for safety reasons. If the password is lost for any reasons, the only way to fix it will be to have the user change have the data manager reset that password, and the user can go ahead and set that password that perhaps they might have thought that they had before. So they can go ahead and repeat that password. There is no problem. So this is where you do that. Now, in addition to that, you have groups. So you have the group over here. Notice that if I click on the pull down menu, these are the options you have for groups. So you have anything from the ET to the TE. What does that mean? It means that ET is for e-test. That stands for e-test. So for e-test, you have ET coordinator slash proctor, ET proctor. Why would you have these combinations? Well, TE would only take, or it is suggested, I should say, that a user should only have one access for e-test, and one access for TE. So if the user completed, say, the certification for proctoring coordinator, that user should get that combo access of ET coordinator slash proctor. But if the user perhaps is your most common user for e-test, that will be the ET proctor. So ET proctor, to explain, enables that user to start and stop a test. ET coordinator, on the other hand, enables the user to edit a testing session. Not necessarily a task that is commonly done, ET proctor by far is the most common type of user, but it's always good to have both if you can. Obviously, that will require for one to take the certification modules under the CASA's website and then submit those to your data manager. Your data manager will be giving you this access. So the process is not automatically. You have to submit that certification to your data manager, and your data manager will go ahead and give you the access based on your role. All right, so that will be for e-test. And then in addition to that, we can see that we have multiple TE levels of access. Again, for TE admin, that will be the next level down from a data manager. You can have as many as you want TE admins, so that's a high level of access right below that TE admin. Then you have TE basics, and then you have noticed that you have TE teacher basics as well. So there's different access depending on the role of the student, of the user, I'm sorry. All right, so notice that you also have the options over here to disable an account, disable and suspend. So both of those are basically to stop an account from being used. And then you have the contact information. So that will be needed in order to save, especially that email. That will be important field to fill out in order to save a user account. All right, so that is first name, last name, and email. On the bottom of this, just to go over, you have menu access rights. So let me expand this. Then you have container access rights, that's basically your sites. And then you have data access right, which basically goes into the details of what is being listed, what is being viewed, what is being created, update, deleted. So these are the details of access a user would have. Now, notice that they are either with the aqua color or a gray color. The reason for that is because these are to be set by the access group that you select. So in other words, a user, a data manager, should not be going over here and start clicking on any of these boxes over here. This should be predetermined by the access group that you select. So in other words, you do not have to worry about data access right, container access right, menu access rights. I will be showing you exactly what what are the type of access each group would have next. All right, but this should not be added under the user account. It should be added under the access, the group access. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, and this time we're going to go to organization. and we're going to go to access groups. So again, we cover already users. We're going to go to access groups. Okay, so for our fictitious database, we have the access group for TE admin, enhance, TE basic data manager, TE basic access, teacher basic access, and teacher access enhanced. So we're going to compare two. We're going to compare the TE admin access, which is again the highest level of access after data manager, and then we're going to check on the other hand something that is more basic, such as the TE teacher access. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on this record, TE admin access, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that pencil icon. Again, notice that pattern where the system lets you, unclick that, but change it to edit mode by clicking on that pencil icon. So now you can see the menu access rights for TE admin. So all these areas over here from users, from, accessing this right here, it's only the user being able to access that area. It doesn't necessarily give you access to edit it, access to delete it, access to create a new one. It just lets you access. That's basically what menu access right is. All right, so you notice that the TE admin, it has selections or check marks under most of these areas, from reports to any surveys that the student needs to be given, additional reports and so forth. So that will be your menu access rights. Then we have container access, right? That is basically where the site is being, enabled. And you have data access, right? So notice that in addition to the data access, right, this particular access group, TE admin access, has been enabled to merge, enabled to batch delete, enabled to cascade deletion, enabled survey for those California, agencies who do, surveys, and so forth. So these are additional access that are given. I'm going to click on the pencil icon so you can see those, selections, and then you see this, detail, area by area. So this basically lets you see access, I should say, through a lister, then lets you see the data. Then this one lets you create, say, a demographic record. This one lets you update that demographic record. This one lets you delete that demographic record. So basically, that's what each of these mean. All right, so notice that again, because this is a high level access, it has, check marks everywhere. All right, so in comparison, we're going to go ahead and look at your TE admin access. These are, again, predetermined for you, but if you as the data manager need to edit this is where you do it, under the access group. All right, so obviously these are all the users, the fictitious users that the system has for teachers. Then we're going to go ahead and click under menu access rights. Notice that it's much, much less. You have some reports, some records access, that this access group is capable of accessing. Then we're going to switch to, we're going to skip container rights because that is not set right now. And then data access rights. So notice that it's less, less check marks selected, and notice that mostly is for listing. Again, that is to see a record under a lister. Viewing, that is basically to double click in opening that record, create, very little creation capability over here. And then updating, there is as well, some updating. There is no deleting access, as you can see at all. And those will be the access for your teacher. So you can see the comparison of the two. Again, these are predetermined for you. You don't have to do anything, only if you are to you're looking to either enhance that access group or reduce some of the access level. This is where you will do it. All right, so moving forward, we're gonna go ahead and let's see, we're going to go to steps to add a student record. All right, so to add a student record, you can do it multiple ways, but one way I would recommend is going to records, student demographics, record students demographics. I happen to like this way because it's more of a central way of seeing all the activity for the student. So to create a student record, we're going to go ahead and click on the new button, and we're going to go ahead and enter this a record. So let's just go ahead and name it 112233. All right, so this is going to be Oscar, your student. So Oscar, last name Peña. All right, so let's just go ahead and say that Oscar was born. Today is Oscar's birthday, let's say. So that's 23. And let's just say this was, 1978, all right? That's not my birthday, but that's the fictitious data, right? So we're going to go ahead and save this record. Notice what happens once I save this record. My navigator as of right now is empty. I'm going to click on save. Well, one, the system will tell me, any other areas that should be entered before, saving this record. So I'm going to go ahead and select the gender and save again. So again, look what happens once I save. Now under my navigator, I have the options of in-program year, student records, class enrollment. Now this record is, ready to have activity, to enter activity. Notice that we didn't enter any start date or end date. There is no record of activity. So the first thing we want to do is, if the student, say for example, is to be tested, it's just a matter of this student, Oscar, the student, entering 112233 ID, and then the system will go ahead and enter whatever information is set under e-test, under the program enrollment, the class enrollment, the demographic history in the test, of course, but if you are to do it manually, you can go ahead and click on in-program years, and then, create a new in-program year. This basically enables that record to be active in the current program year. Because if you notice, when we created that demographic record, there was no starting or ending date, right? So in order to create activity, we're going to click on new. We're going to say this is in the current program year. Now there is an starting and ending date under this Oscar the student, and we're going to go ahead and select a site where Oscar is active. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and save. Now that we did this, we can go ahead and search for Oscar the student. So there it is. We don't even have to search. It's right on the top. If we do not create activity for Oscar the student, we would not expect to see that record there, because every record that displays on the lister, and this is just goes across every lister you are, or even reports, it's only by activity in the current program year. What do I mean with that is, if the student has activity, class enrollment, program enrollments, attendance, tests, anything that relates to the current program year of 7/1/22 to 6/30 2023, then the system will go ahead and display that data under this lister. Now you might ask, well, Oscar, what happens if I create a demographic record and I forget to enter activity? How do I access that record back so that I can enter that activity? Well, if you are to click on the filter button and remove that option of current program year, then the system will go ahead and give you those records that do not have activity, or those records that have activity across years. All right, so that will be the trick. All right, so just to go over my list over here, so that is adding steps to adding a record. So we're gonna go ahead and add an enrollment in a test for Oscar. All right, so again, I'm double clicking on the record and I have my navigator now. I'm here. I went ahead and created that in program year. So the student is considered active in the current program year. But in addition to that, I'm going to go ahead and create a class enrollment. And again, this is why I like to go to record students demographics, because I have all the activity that I need to enter for the student here. TE has many ways of entering the information, but this will be one that I happen to like because I have everything under one same window. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a class enrollment. So remember that class we looked before? We're gonna go ahead and find that class. So we're saying that this class is from the 22-23 year. The class instance that we enter was 991861. All right, and this happens to be the fault 21. That happens to be the name that was the extended ID that was given. All right, and we're saying that notice that the system already entered a start uh, a date enter class. This refers to the definition and the instance really, because the instance is the one that carries the date of this class. In other words, that is a safety feature so that I don't enter any date that is prior to 8/18 because that class started on 8/18. All right, so we're not going to enter any exit date yet because we don't know when the student's going to exit, but we're going to go ahead and save that record. All right, so then if I am to close over here, then you can see that Oscar, the student, now has a class enrollment. So I can move down the list now and class records. So basically that will be my attendance. As you remember, we can enter, through this, or we can enter as an attendance through the class. So we're going to go ahead and click on new. And again, we're going to select the current program year. We're going to select the same class that we had. So that is 991861. That is FA21. And the enrollment, so there it is, Oscar. So, the record, so let's just say this today, right? So, 2/23/2023. All right, so Oscar, the student, is gonna be doing daily attendance, and just go ahead and say that it was 2 hours. All right, so then we save it, and now the student has a total amount of instructional hours. Notice that I could have specified whether this was distance learning, but and then it gives you that combination. All right, so then next one is in program enrollment. So let's go ahead and enroll Oscar the student. So we're going to go ahead and click on new program year. This year, let's go ahead and say this is an ESL student. And let's just say that the enrollment was at the beginning of the program year. So let's just say it's 07/01/2022. All right, so let's go ahead and save it. Any fields that the system might need in order to save, notice that I'm skipping some fields here. The system will let me know if this is a a field required in order to save. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close. Now there's a program enrollment, and finally there is the test. If the student, if the student is to be tested through e-test, obviously, you don't have to create the test, but just for the purpose of this practice here, we're going to go ahead and go over the steps of adding a test manually, but usually the case will be that the student will be tested. And even this information, by the way, this is not something that you necessarily have to enter manually. A lot of this information would be brought but through e-test or through your import if you have a third-party database, or if you do it manually. All right, so again, just to go over the steps of doing the test, we're going to click on new. We're going to go ahead and select the program year. We're going to select the class. Well, the class is not really necessary over here, so we're just going to go ahead and skip that class information, but we will select the site, and we're going to go ahead and say that Oscar the student is an ESL student, so he went ahead and took that level 8 test, so a 081 R for reading. So that is that, and then you can go ahead and enter the test itself. So because we are notice that the system does let you enter answer by answer. If you have that information yourself, then we can go ahead and enter that information. If you don't, obviously usually the case will be if this will be, say, a paper test, right? So the student got a paper test, then you can go ahead and enter the item by item response. If you happen to, let's say this will be a situation that you lost the e-test, it was deleted by accident. Let's say, for example, it does happen, it was deleted by accident, but through a report, you have the raw score, then you can go ahead and click on score override and enter the raw score, say, and then the system will go ahead and give you that, assessment date must be entered, of course. So let's see, assessment date over here. So that was done today. Let's say 23, 2023. All right, so notice that, the system will go ahead and if this is a valid, I'm sorry, that was a raw score. So let's just say 13 over here. So then the system will go ahead and give you my equivalent of a scale score. So a raw score, as you know, is basically the total number of correct answers in a test. So in this, case, I have up to 24 of a raw score, right? Because, but those are the total possible amount of answers. And then you have the scale score, and that is what, the amount of answers, correct amount of answers translate to a scale score. All right, so that is how to enter a test. All right, so looking down
Oscar,
yes,
I'm sorry.
please.
We are hoping to take a quick pause for some questions, if it's okay.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of the questions Renee asked, is it possible, can you show how to add personnel and how to link personnel to a class instance?
Very good question. Yes. All right. So for those of you who do not know, personnel is basically your teachers, right? So these are the teachers that are teaching certain classes. So we talk about access groups, and we notice that under the access group, there is an access group for teachers. So to link that teacher to that access, so that teacher has capability of, only accessing that information for that class, we're going to go ahead and go to organization, and we're going to go to personnel, and we're going to go to registration, organization, personnel, and registration. So again, we're working with a fictitious database over here. So all the data, it's the personnel records have been created, but you will click on that new button over here to create that user. So you would go ahead and link this user, this personnel record, with the user. So by clicking over here, I can go ahead and click on users. And if I don't see it over here, I can go ahead and click from lister, and it gives me a master list of all the users that have been created. So as of right now, this is what the system gives me as access. Let me go ahead and see if it gives me access to other. But technically, and again, we're limited in a sense because we are working with a fictitious database. So we're limited to what is, there in the database. But under your agency, you should see all the list of all your users that you have created. Once you select that user, then it's going to go ahead and link that personal record with the that user account. So when we click on save, obviously it's asking for a personal ID. So let's just go ahead and say 1, 2, 3. So save, and notice that now the system gives me the capability of accessing the functional roles. So when I click on functional roles and I create a new one, then I can go ahead and set that start and end date for the teacher. Let's just go ahead, again, following that same class we've been using, 991861. Let's see, the system is not gonna try again. History. So we said it was 991861. There it is. So we're using the FA21. All right, and then you can start, enter the start date. So, this student, this teacher, I'm sorry, let's say it started on 7/1/2022. And then we can save. All right, so basically this is how you would go ahead and make that connection between your teacher and and the user account. You still have to connect the class to the teacher, and that will be the second step that I'm going to show. So I'm going to go ahead and go to organization, classes, and definitions. Remember how we said that the definition carries few items. So that will be teachers will be one of the items that it includes. So it will be the class ID, the class description, and teachers. So we're gonna go ahead and click on definitions. We're gonna click on the class. So the class is 991861. It's FA21. And here you see teachers. So we're going to click on teachers, and these are the teachers that are available. So this was the one I created, remember? So this is the teacher, and now the teacher has been, linked to the class. So to recap, we went to organization and personnel. And through the personnel, we went ahead and linked it to the user. So a user account must be already created. And then we went to record organization, classes, and definitions, look for that class. And then under the your menu, we went ahead and click on teacher and select the teacher. So those are the two areas you want to go ahead and link. Any other questions, Adrian?
Yes, there was one that was kind of addressed, but it'd be nice to cover it with the group. Marilyn had asked, what's the difference between personnel and a user?
Very good question. Very good question. So personnel, generally it addresses your teachers. But it could be counselors, but usually is your teacher. So that is to create that association of that linking of that personnel with a user account, and with that go ahead and associate it to a class. And by doing that combination of those three areas, you basically give access to a teacher to access only the records that pertain to their class. So whichever student is enrolled in their class, that's the data that they're going to be accessing. So they're not going to be able to access anyone else from any other classes because they're not enrolled in their class. It's basically a way of having a certain control of access. Any other questions?
Not at this moment.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. I know we got 20 minutes left. All right. So we're going to go ahead and do an export. All right. So many of you don't need the export, but you usually import the data through TE, and just to cover, the importing will be done through tools and third-party import wizard. Now, in order for you to import, there's a certain format that is needed, and you're welcome to send us an email to techsupport@casos.org, and we'll connect you with that format that is needed. If you are one of the common third-party attendance systems, most likely those attendance systems are already formatted to export with to TE. But if you don't, if you have perhaps your own, data system, attendance system, you can go ahead and create one with one of our templates. Again, you can go ahead and contact tech support, and we'll, provide you with that information. We'll take you through the process. But once you're set up, let's say this will be the way of importing your data, and you'll see the type of data that we can import. So we talk about personal and users, right? So this will be your personal and user records, class data, which basically will be your class definitions and your class instance, your demographic data, which basically is your student demographic information, your student program status, basically the enrollment of those, the statuses of those students, in their class, entry, as you are familiarized with that paper form. That's basically the information at the point of entering to the program. Class status, by again, just whether the student is active, the status for the class for that student. Attendance, as the name suggests, is basically the attendance of the student, whether it's daily attendance, whether it's accumulated, update accumulated, or just regular update. It will be all under the attendance. Test data, rarely used, but let's say you are doing EL Civics for those California agencies, you can go ahead and import your EL Civics through that. Update, just much like the entry, it updates that entry information. And if you have some high school HSC exam, that you will need to import, then that will be the those other ones. Each one of these corresponds to a certain format that is, needed. Again, if you need, for us to follow to guide you through this format, just send us an email and we can connect you with that, definitely. All right, so once you do that, then you obviously, let's say this is demographics, we're going to click next, then the system is expecting for that file. That file needs to be in a format of CSV. That's basically your common, comma separated value, format that TE requires. It's, a database format. You can create it in Excel basically. And, and again, we'll take you through that process. But this is the file that TE is expecting. You will go ahead and upload the file over here, and then the system will take you through the wizard and show you all the information that is to be imported, and then you can go ahead and import that information. Once it's imported, then let's say this was demographics, you can go to record students demographics, and you will see that record, those records appearing under your demographic records. All right, so that is how you import. Now, how do you export? In the event that you have to export, you get to your lister. This would happen through a lister. We happen to be under the demographic lister, and that will be one. Perhaps you would have to export your test. That will be records and test. So either way, you have to get to that lister first. You are welcome to remove certain columns if you need to. Let's say you don't need retested. You can right click over here and hide retested. You can right click to and bring additional information, show class ID, and then once you have that information ready, then you can click on that export button. So once you click on that export button, notice that you have the following choices. You have export, you have export WIOA third party, and you have export all WIOA. We usually don't use the all WIOA, that's the previous format, but you will be having between these two. So it all depends whether you are exporting for WIOA purposes or just exporting the data as it is, as it shows. So it all depends. You would have to see what will be the purpose of you exporting if you are to looking to import this data to your database, your third-party system. And if your third-party system requires WIOA format, then obviously you have to choose WIOA format. So you have to do some investigation in that sense. But essentially, this is how you do it. I'm going to go ahead and choose just your plain export. And I'm gonna go ahead and notice the system opens that window displayed, and notice that you have the choice of saving it as a Excel, or as I mentioned before, you also have the format of comma separated values, that is a CSV. So usually that will be the format. But notice that you also have that PDF. You also have a Word in case you have to pass this information to somebody else. Hey, check for duplicates records, among this list or so forth. So you have that option there. All right. So basically that is how you export. All right, let me look at my list. We're gonna switch now and we're gonna do reports. I know we only have about 14 minutes left. All right,
Oscar?
so yes,
Oscar,
please.
I'm so sorry. Is it possible to get in a quick question about imports?
Please do, yes.
Okay, Harold asks, do the imports have to be done by class one by one?
Do the imports have to be done by class? Well, no, not at all. You can import your entire database if you wish to. And here's one good tip. You will think that if you are importing the entire database, the system will go ahead and duplicate these records. No, whatever has been entered already, let's say you're doing attendance as your most common import, right? So you don't have to do it class by class. You select your entire agency, and the system will go ahead and let's say, you're doing attendance from, you reporting attendance on the weekly basis, right? So you're reporting attendance from this Monday until, let's say today's Friday until Friday, right? So for the entire agency, you don't have to, the system will go ahead and that export will be broken down by class, by student, but you don't have to do that selection. You basically, select entire agency, and your system should be, enabled to do it by by this breakdown. And this, if that record already exists in your database, the system will go ahead and let you know out of 100 records, 90 were admitted, 10 were found as duplicates. So but it's a safety feature that you already imported this data, so the system will not let you import it again. Any other questions?
If we have time, there was one more in regards to importing.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, does the PERS import have to be done only when new teachers come on board or hired? Or does the PERS import have to be done at the beginning of every semester?
That's a very good question. You guys are asking good questions. So the record already exists, especially when it comes to a personal record, right? Once a teacher starts, there is no need for you to bring that teacher again, because that teacher is already part of that person record, that personal record, it's already there. So you don't have to bring it anymore. And it's confusing because if you notice, when I go to tools and third-party system, and if you read the information over here, there is a suggestion over here on the sequence of records to import. And yes, in general, you want to follow this format, but at one point during the year, you're going to have to enter, let's say new classes, but the students are already there, right? So, that is fine, so to go back to that question, no, you don't have to bring those personal records back again, because they're already there, and the system will tell you these records are already there. You don't have to, sometimes you might be bringing classes, and that class might be associated with the teacher, and it will tell you, you'll see, a prompt that the system will tell you that, this record, this personal record will not be imported because it's already there. So that is perfectly fine. That is just a safety feature from the system, is by design. So no, you don't have to bring those personal records if they're already there. All right. Any other questions?
No, we're good for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and switch to reports. All right. So there's many reports that the TE has, and it all depends what kind of role you're doing. So say for example, if you are a teacher, or providing information for teachers, then you want to go to reports, test results, and anything from your individual skills profile to competency performance to content standards to learning gains, test responses is a good one. Say, your students want to know those tests. Let's go ahead and give it a quick check on this one. So if you like to run the report, which very likely will be by class, you click on class instances. Now, notice that under my report setup navigator here on the upper left, I also have class instances for tests. You do not click on that, you click on class instances. But what is class instances for tests? If a test has a class ID in it, then it's associated with the class. Technically, generally, we don't suggest that because it might limit the weight of you searching for the record. Because if I'm searching for record 112233, remember that's the fictitious ID I gave for Oscar the student. If Oscar the student was not tested under the class 991861, that's the class that we'll be choosing, then the report will not give me that information. So I'm limiting myself if I do that, in general. So if I do class instances, on the other hand, that basically goes by the enrollment of the class. As long as the student is enrolled in that class, whichever test the student is taking, whether it was on side 1 or side 10, or whether it was in, ESL, last semester, beginning or, level 1, the system will still give me that history of testing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select a class over here. I'm using my add filter option here, and I'm going for that class I've been choosing, 991861. All right, so there it is over here. I'm going to put a check mark and I'm going to click generate. All right, so you see the breakdown over here where, it breaks it down by 4. So every student in the class who took 081 hour, excuse me, then it lists those students over here. You have some students with diamond. You have pluses showing the correct answers and minuses for the incorrect answers. Excuse me. And then you have asterisks for those answers that were left empty. Excuse me. I'm trying to shake off a cold. Obviously talking irritates it. Give me 1 second. Can you interrupt? Can you intervene, Adrian? Give me 1 second.
Yes, I can take over. So we were at class profile on, we're doing class profile. Okay. Let's see. So under the class profile, life and work, it shows you what tests they have taken, their raw scale score. So their raw score of 1, their scale scores here. It shows you what students have taken that particular test and class profile. And I don't have access to Oscar's screen. So
all right, thank you.
Yep,
Thank
sorry.
you. I'm sorry. I just had to clear my throat. Thank you very much. I apologize for this. All right. So again, as Adrian was mentioning, the breakdown, now you see the next, this is your bridge form as those, life and work. So these are your students. You have, again, the correct answers with the with the pluses and then the minuses for incorrect answers. And you have the position over here of the question all the way from 1 to 28. So again, this will be one good report you are to, show your, teachers, your students. But if you are to look for reports for your teachers, go ahead and check the ones under test results. All right. So anything from skills profile, competency performance, content standards, learning gains, test responses. Now, if you are a data manager and you're looking for more of general data, you might find helpful your data, integrity. You have your NRS or you have your CAPE. So if you go to state reports, California, and you do your CAPE data integrity. So let me click on this. And this right here, by the way, it's specifically for CAPE agencies, California agencies. All right. So we're going to go ahead and notice that in this case, we're not selecting any class because this is a different role. We're playing the role of your data manager, that administrator who's looking to see that data overall, right? So we're going to click on, just click on generate. No need to select anything. I'm not even selecting the timing because a lot of users will go ahead and set a time, and when you set a time, let me just quickly go back over here so I can point what if a activity date range. When you do this, you're basically putting a window of activity of time, let's say, for that student. If that student has a pre-test outside of that window you're setting, that window of time, the system is going to show you as if that student is missing a test. So technically, generally, it's not a good idea to set an activity, range. All right. So this is your data integrity. So this gives you, this is a very good report that will give you an overall, preview of what your data is in TE. What are the areas that you need to work on? What are the areas that you're doing good? Let's say, for example, less than 12 hours of instruction. So I know that at the beginning, someone asked, are we mandated to enter the, hours, into TE? Yes, the answer is yes, in order to, fulfill your guidelines for funding. You have to have, attendance there in TE. Why? Because students need at least, let's say for your CAPE report, at least 12 hours of instruction to be counted. Notice that under 02, those who have less than 12 hours of instructions are mentioned over here. Those who have or empty hours of instructions are broken down over here. And same thing with those who have 1 to 11 hours of instruction, over here. Notice that as I hover on top of those numbers, I get this red outline. So I'm going to go ahead and hover on top of the 02, and I'm going to click. Once I click, this is called a drilled in feature. So it takes me to that list of 273 students over here. From here, I can go to Oscar the student. Remember, Oscar the student doesn't have a test yet. Or doesn't have hours. Well, we did enter demographic, but I'm sorry, attendance, but it was only 2 hours, right? So if I click on this underline of the ID and the name, it gives me an extended navigator over here. I can go to class records and I see that attendance that I enter of 2 hours. So still, Oscar the student is short by 10 hours. So this is a good report to keep track of those students that need to be tested or need to have additional attendance. Obviously, there's so much you can do. If Oscar the student has left the program, there's nothing else you can do. You accumulated as many hours as Oscar the student attended. So it is what it is. But this is a good report for that data manager to look. All right, so we're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and speed up. The next one I would like to show you, again, for that data manager, will be demographics and your demographic summary. So this particular report, again, I'm not gonna choose but actually, you know what? I'm gonna choose a class for this because it will be big otherwise. So 991861. Okay, so I'm choosing FA21 in January. Now, this report, it's your demographic, gives you a overall demographic breakdown of your students. So you'll see those students who have Social Security, the programs they have, what is their lowest program, what is their highest diploma, their gender, ethnicity, race, anything that has to do with the demographic information. It breaks it down, native language, and so forth. And again, notice that as I hover on top, I can go ahead and click on these 19 records, and it gives me those who have the native language of Spanish. So I can, go to that individual students if I choose to. To go back, I just click on that orange bar. The beauty of this report is that in addition to see this, data where I can drill in, I can go back to say layout settings, and I can add pie graph if I want to. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose that and apply. So now, in addition to that data that it gives me that this pie chart, so it's very good for say presentations, or if you want to switch from that pie chart to perhaps a bar graph, I can go ahead and do that too. So it gives me multiple ways to show the same data. Very good for presentations, but this is specifically to the demographic lister. All right, and still I can hover to these particular students, so that's pretty good things. The last thing I would like to show will be submission, and I know I'm over, so I'm gonna quickly show. So this is specifically for California agencies, for Cape agencies, who are submitting their data. So to do that, you go to Tools, you go to Quarterly Data Submission Wizard. This is a new feature that has been added because before, if you are that data manager for the agency, you would have to send an email to, either Cape or, WIOA, so now the system does it automatically for you. So again, going to Tools and Quarterly Data Submission, the system will take you through the wizard here. You select the program here, which is pre-selected, and then the system already knows the quarter that is due. So you click Next, the system will check your funding sources and whether you are WIOA, CAP, or both, and then the system will go ahead and generate the reports that it needs. What are the reports? Your data integrity, your your payment points, all that will be included, and then you click next and the system will go ahead and submit that to the appropriate, agency. So very easy. You even have the choice of entering any notes that you want to display it, and the system will send you a copy to the, say the data manager or the main point of contact to the agency. They will get a copy automatically of this submission. All right, so basically that concludes the training, how to disconnect to TE, which is the last bullet here. Is basically you close. You do have the option, say if you're gonna walk out, out of the office, you can go ahead and disconnect. That takes you to the login screen, or you can go ahead and close TE if you're done for the day. All right, so that concludes the training. I apologize, I'm over 4 minutes. I'll give it back to Mandalee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar and Adrian, for conducting the presentation today. I saw lots of questions in the chat. It looks like everyone was able to benefit from this. If you think that there may be a colleague that would benefit from this, my colleague Holly Clark has popped in the chat the registration links for the next upcoming opportunities. Looks like on March 9th as well as on the 30th. As I mentioned earlier, we do really look at those evaluations. That helps inform our professional development as we continue to plan for the year, as well as what sessions we will remediate and then post out. So we thank you for your time this afternoon. Again, we thank CASAS for coming and showing your expertise, Oscar and Adrian. We look forward to having you all again, and we'll see everybody on the next webinar. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.